Hello, engaged citizens of Columbia County. Welcome. I'm your host, Sherry Ryan. And today I am joined with Paul Langner, who is the candidate for the Port of Columbia County, position one. He's running against the incumbent Nancy Ward. Welcome.
Thank you, Sherry. Thanks for having me today.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. And we're just going to get right into it. I want to just know a little bit about you, if you could share with us.
Sure enough, pretty simple. I was born and raised in a little town of 1,000 people northeast of Seattle. So I was born in the timber industry. You're either a dairy farmer or you're a logger. You didn't get to be anything else. Enlisted in the Coast Guard right out of high school. Did 22 years in the Coast Guard. Came up through the Howes pipe, as they say. Actually went off to officer candidate school, earned a commission, and eventually commanded 3 different ships in the Coast Guard. My last duty station was down in Astoria on the buoy tender. Realized that in Astoria, the difference between January and July is do you have 2 pairs of gloves on or just 1 pair of gloves? So decided to, okay, we're gonna, when we look for a place for the family to live, we settled in Rainier, anticipating I would probably go on and continue on my Coast Guard career. Um, but my eldest daughter at that time had been through, well, she was a freshman in high school, and she'd already been to 5 school districts. I told her I'd stay here and let you get to the end, and that was, I think it was the right choice. So I retired. I chose to retire at that point in time. So I'm married. I have 2 daughters and I have 2 grandchildren. And the daughter with the 2 grandchildren lives here in Columbia County, and so Columbia County is my home. Albeit again, I've only been here for 30 years, but that's that's as good as it's going to get. That's as good as it's going to get. So
It's your home
after
now. 30 years, you've done it.
so after retiring there from the Coast Guard, took the first job with the Department of Environmental Quality, then went off to manage the credit union in Clouds Kenai, then to the Port of St. Helens, now the Port of Columbia County, on staff. Then was recruited away from there to Teven Brothers up in here in Rainier, and come next week, I retire from Teven Brothers after a nice long career there, and hopefully become your new port commissioner.
Wonderful. Well, why are you running for this position? Can you tell us a little bit, about why you want to run and hold this position?
This is the port has an interesting background, and obviously all ports are organized under ORS 777, with the exception of the Port of Portland, which is the export authority for the state of Oregon. But ports have special powers and opportunities that they can do. So they can go out and bond, they can buy property, they can sell property, they can induce property. They are creators, they are job generators, and they are a good component of the county, and a neat entity into themselves. So it's not just boats going up and down the river or other stuff. It's airports, it's all kinds of transportation modes. And I like this sport. I think it's time for one. It's my time to kind of keep on giving back to my community. I think there's some things we can improve on the port and try to get the entire port portfolio working. Try to get all the properties up and on the tax rolls. That's an important thing. And then also position the port for the future, because things are changing, and they're changing a lot faster than we want to realize. I have a big concern is we know the economy is changing, especially with the climate change issues are out there. But how fast can we transition? How fast can we get to where we're going to go? And also understand there's going to be a bridge action between what we're doing today and what's going to be happening in 20 years from now. And I would sure like my grandson to be out, actually, my granddaughter to be out there salmon fishing here and going out for some springers. My grandson to play ball here or come back and build engineers or build dikes or something, because he's got a construction genome in him that just isn't going to quit. That boy wants to be slamming nails and digging holes. So
Oh,
that's
awesome.
that's the reason to that's one of the reasons I want to be on the board. I think it's my time, and I think I could help.
Yeah, yeah. That's wonderful. What does a port commissioner do? I know that, they represent the public's interest and, they set port policy and such and the different budgeting and such. Can you give us a little bit of a bit of an insight? What do they do?
So obviously, setting policy and direction are the easy pat answers, and that's what they're elected to do. I think their biggest important job is listen, listen, and listen a little bit more, and try to
Mm,
figure out where try to set a strategic goal of where we're going and what we can do with the resources that we have.
Hmm.
Um, the, the port commissioner, it's, yeah, we got the policy piece, and we know what we can do, but they also need to be just as active as business recruitment as with staff. They need to be there to sit there and make the right fiscal decisions. And the hard one is the prioritization. I don't care at what level. There's no government that says they have enough money, and it's not, and that's not a trite answer that, well, we just don't have enough money. It's
Yeah.
to do the things that we want, that society wants. There just isn't it there. So how do you prioritize where that money is spent to get the biggest return on investment?
Okay. Wow. Thank you for that insight. What you have, studied about this position to share with us and educate us. I really value that in candidates going forward with that. What are a few of your own long-term, short-term goals, things that you have seen, like, you were kind of talking about ways that you might have wanted to improve some things or what we can look into a little deeper. What are some of your goals that you might have?
I think that what I really want to do is go back through. I think my first year is going to be a learning year, but it's
Hmm.
working with staff and look at all the assets there and look at the entire ports portfolio and identify what's working, what isn't working, and what needs to be tweaked or improved upon. Um, I think that in the job that I work for Tevan, we developed this port thing, a port operation here as a private port. But there's a little rule that it's difficult. We designed what the pier looks like in 45 days. The engineers built it in 98 to 110 days, but it took us 1,000 days to get the land use permits and everything there. And you start looking at that. How do we move that around, that so when someone comes to the port and says, I'd like to be here, I'd like to move into this facility, whether it's on the water, whether it's out by the airport, how do we get to a position that when they say we'd like to come here, we can jump up and say, we're ready for you, we're ready to help, without shortcutting anything, without cutting any corners, but also making sure that it's it's the job can be done, that they can get to yes, and we can do it in a responsible amount of time. Because sadly, there is very little patient capital in this world, and people
Yeah.
want to see move forward. And to tell somebody, well, in 5 years from now we're going to have it, doesn't really help somebody looking for a job today.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. We have a few, kind of hot topics that, people write in about and want to kind of know and pick your brain about what you think about these things. And when they're to assist themselves in figuring out, who am I going to vote for? Who has, who do I align with where they're going with this, right? Um, we talk about the next renewable project. And this is a project that is, coming possibly to Port Westward in Clatskanie out in Quincy. And so, what are your thoughts on that particular project?
Sherry, I'm going to look at this. I'm going to give you a perspective that some people I think are missing.
Okay.
Port Western is a good place for this project. It's out in the dike lands out there, uh, but on a deep water port and on a deep water facility that can be accessed by ships of all kinds in a reach of the river that doesn't have to be dredged.
Mm.
But what next brings to us is an opportunity not just for the next 15 years or the next 20 years, but probably for the next 100 years. And the reason I say that, we have to transition off of fossil fuel. We all know that. We're all getting it. We know that that's both for climate change and for various other reasons. Yeah, we're going to run out someday. Plus, it's not doing any good for the climate. So we're going to have to transition off of that. And I don't care how big that ship is, there's not a battery that's going to run you from Portland to Shanghai. It just doesn't exist. We have to
Yeah.
transition our economy. So we have people like Global that are already in Port Westward working on the ethanol piece and moving that. We also have Next that wants to sit there and do the biodiesel. I think there are going to be applications for the far foreseeable future where you're going to need that heavy horsepower ratio, the heat to horsepower ratio that creates energy. You're going to need that as a transition until we get to the next thing. And the next thing is going to be hydrogen. If you read this week's Wall Street Journal talked about how Norway has finally got liquid hydrogen ferries that are running around the fjords. That's where we're going because the infrastructure that Global and Next bring to us is also the same infrastructure we're going to need for hydrogen. And the
Mm,
hydrogen economy is one that we're all going to be on. I mean, and that goes back to Star Trek days of listening to things. That the hydrogen is where we need to get to. Low emissions, something that really doesn't tear our environment up. It's something that's plentiful.
mm,
And I think next is the keystone to get there.
mm.
And they're how we're going to get to the future. And I'd like to see that happen, one, in our community, because it creates obviously jobs. It creates a whole bunch of tax revenue for Columbia County. You talk to the poor roadmaster in Columbia County, we've got 573 miles of paved road in Columbia County. And we get enough general fund every year to pave 5 of them. So you better be real patient if you're going to get the road in front of your house paved type thing.
Yeah.
We need to grow our economy in the county, but also it creates this tremendous opportunity for the future. And not just the stuff right now, but the whole hydrogen economy. And this is we're perfectly positioned because you're not going to find a facility as nice and as wonderful up in Seattle on Puget Sound where you can sit there and bring hydrogen in. You could sit there and develop Port Westford into a hydrogen facility that could be shipping hydrogen to the Bay Area, shipping it down to SoCal, shipping it up into Puget Sound. Shipping is not going to discontinue. It's going to be going forever. We're still going to be a global trade and a global economy, and hydrogen will be the way that it happens. And so I think I see next as a very important step to get there.
Okay. Okay. What what are your thoughts on, expanding the transportation for the port?
I am well. I'm super passionate about barging.
Okay.
It never went away. And
Mhm.
if you've had the privilege to look in Europe, there's barges running up and down the Rhine and the Rhone, and you can sit there and take a barge from Amsterdam, go through, walk over in Switzerland, and head out the Danube and exit to the Black Sea, all on a barge.
Oh,
One
okay.
barge, one barge replaces, well, the river barges here replace about 110 rail cars or 350 trucks. So that's one barge. We got away from it in America because we had cheap fuel, we had cheap everything. And so our economy since World War II developed, hey, we can just throw more diesel at it. We can throw more oil at it. We didn't have to be efficient in vessel design. We didn't have to be efficient in that. Just throw more diesel at it.
Mhm.
Well, we're dead. We can't do that anymore. Or
Yeah.
we're going to and so there's a program that's used up and down the East Coast right now called short seas shipping, and it's used a lot in the Gulf of Mexico. The short seas shipping is save these big ports. These big port projects require a lot of dredging, a lot of work, a lot of maintenance. The
Mhm.
Seattle Tacomas, the Oaklands, the LALBs, Vancouver, the Prince Ruperts, the Ensenadas type places. Save those facilities and feed them with containers that can come by barge system. So
Mhm.
imagine, if you will, instead of that, you could have a barge facility in Columbia City that would pick up a barge, pick up containers, load them on the barge. The tug leaves. It's exactly one day from the time they leave Columbia City to the time they'd be in Tacoma to load onto that big container ship. That one barge took 800 truckloads off I-5. That one barge took 2 unit trains or took 3 unit trains off the I-5 corridor. It moved it that way. And there's more opportunities there. I mean, because we can barge all the way to Lewiston, and in my current job, we do. We bring stuff in from Lewiston, Idaho all the time. It can work its way down, lock its way out, and reach these markets. Now, we're not going to be moving flat screen TVs or Prada handbags or anything like that because that stuff is time sensitive. We get it. We won't be shipping cheese and lettuce. But for the big commodities, barging is this little tool. We can sit there and take a look at our facilities and pick it back up there. And you could have these little barge docks. You could have one in St. Helens or Columbia
Mhm.
City, have one in Astoria. But you could also swing by Grays Harbor. You could swing by Newport. You could swing by Coos Bay and do a
Okay.
feeder service that picked up these barges. And short sea shipping is a major part of it. And one of the other candidates, Nick Sorber, reminds me all the time, maybe we do need a car ferry. And I know that sounds silly, but a car ferry from Woodland to coming into St. Helens, Columbia City, my goodness, wouldn't that be nice, especially coming up in the next month when they're going to shut the Lewis and Clark Bridge down for 6 days or what everything is backed up, some other
Yeah.
opportunity.
Yeah, yeah. Very good. Oh my goodness. You really, thank you for addressing all those things and sharing with us those details. Yeah. I ask all candidates this question because I reach out to all the candidates if they win their election. I keep tabs by, emailing and and asking for different input about what happens after you get elected in. And so what this is the question I ask, and this is how I keep tabs, is what are your three top priorities in your first term of port commissioner? What would those be?
Well, first, I hope without related to my three, because if I'm limited to three, I still want to
Okay.
be sure that I want to be approachable and listen to people. And that's probably the
Mm,
most important thing. I
yeah,
want to
yeah.
utilize the entire port's portfolio. Let's get all those
Mm,
assets working or doing something.
mm,
It's time to
yeah,
move on with it. I would like to land the next project. It's enough because I believe my passion of it's a step to getting to the hydrogen economy,
yeah,
and then position the rest of our port assets for the hydrogen economy, and to sit there and also making sure we're generating jobs back into the community, that we are creating an opportunity not just for a job today, but for my grandson and maybe his grandson.
yeah, yeah, totally. Well, thank you so much, Paul, for meeting with me and sharing of yourself and your time and just bringing, information about yourself and what you want to bring to this, position. And I really look forward to seeing, what happens in the future. And I know that there's different forums coming up, so I'm excited to hear more from you and, wish you good luck. So
Thank you
thank
so
you so
very
much.
much. It's a true pleasure.
Yes. Oh, you too. Take care, okay? Bye-bye.
Bye bye.